Yeah, that still
it's aged well.
Yeah, that still resonates because you sort of you feel those pieces. You feel those pieces of chemical warfare. You feel media. I can say media manipulation. Media. We were talking about acting before. All the like tongue twisters you say to warm up. Media manipulation. Media manipulation.
Media manipulates my mutton, mama.
Media manipulates my mutton, mama. Media manipulates my mutton, mama.
3, 2, 1, punch it.
Could you jump to light speed in that tin can? Go back in time in a DeLorean. Will it crash or take to the sky? Tell me, smart guy, does it fly?
Welcome to Does It Fly, the podcast that puts your favorite sci-fi properties, inventions, and conceits to the test. I'm your mad scientist, Hakeem Oluseyi.
And I'm your pop culture expert, Tamara Krinsky. Time to dive into today's topic and see, does it fly?
Welcome back to Does It Fly podcast. Today we're doing it in the 70s, 80s DJ voice. I'm here, Dr. O, with Tamara Krinsky from WKRP Cincinnati.
Well, hello, Hakeem. You are listening to the smooth sounds of Does It Fly. We like to talk about all things science and story here on our Does It Fly podcast.
And we do it in different vibes. Today's vibe is corny. Well, welcome. I don't know about you, but where I am located in my room, it's a little humid and I'm a little hot.
You're always a little hot, Dr. O.
That's what I've heard.
But
thank you so much. Thank you.
Sorry,
it's
guys.
So
we were in a goofy mood today, which makes sense because although what we are going to be talking about is no laughing matter.
No laughing matter. No. We are going back, way back.
To Batman 1989.
1989. What were you doing in 1989? Me? I was waiting to be born. So...
But we are specifically today on Does It Fly going to be talking about the movie Batman, the 1989 Batman, directed by Tim Burton, specifically the Joker's weapon, Smilex.
Smilex. Yes. So I have a confession to make because one thing that fans and friends of this podcast will know is that we love this stuff, right? We love the science. We love the sci-fi. We love the movie making. We love the entertainment. We love the engagement, the thought, the emotional, all of it, right? I'm not really into Batman movies.
Really? Has this always been the case?
It is. I watched this one. But the thing about the Batman movies, I am so finicky sometimes, is that they're dark. I don't mean dark in terms of mood. I mean in terms of actual lighting.
Visual palette.
I don't know why that kind of throws me off, but it does. Yeah. The darkness of it kind of throws me off.
Well, and that's especially interesting with this movie because, Gotham definitely trends dark. That is for sure. At the same time, you've got the Joker in this movie who is bright and vibrant and colorful.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can tell for some reason in the lighting in the studio today, but I did wear a purple shirt in homage to the Joker.
Oh, I thought it was black because I was getting assassin vibes. I was you make a great, what do you call it? You know how you have an anti-hero? What about if you have a sympathetic villain? What would you call that person? An anti-villain?
I would call it a humanized villain, maybe.
Yeah, you make a nice humanized Joker companion. If you're super villainous enough, you're allowed to have companions that are not quite as villainous as you. But I don't know what to say about Harley Quinn, where she falls.
I was about to say you're bringing Harley Quinn into this, or
No, don't get me wrong. There are elements of I love Alfred. I love the technology. I love the Batcave, and I everything about it I love. I just don't love visually the darkness.
That is fair. Well, today we're going to specifically be talking about the chemistry that occurs in Batman
Smilex.
Because we're going to be talking about Smilex, which in case this is not ringing a bell, Smilex is what is known in the comics. It's the movie interpretation of what's known in the comics as Joker Venom.
Yes,
It's the
Joker venom.
acid that he uses. You see him squirt it out of his flower. It's,
Yes.
it's part of the story here. And again, for those who may not have seen the Tim Burton 1989 Batman, now would be your time to press pause on Does It Fly? Go watch it, come back, and we will get into it.
One thing about Batman is Batman's enemies to me have always been a little weird, right? But Batman is weird because he doesn't have really superpowers, and so I think Batman is more grounded in reality than a lot of these superhero shows are, But so how do you have these really human-like characters, but yet they're super villainous like the Joker and the Penguin? But I tell you, when they came out with the Joker movie, which is a whole other topic, one of my favorites ever. Like, I loved it. Saw it in theaters. So I come in biased toward the Joker.
All right. Well, let's get into it. His device, his gadget, his thing in this movie is Smilex, which is the venom. And basically this happens in the story, after he, this villain, whose name is Jack, falls into a vat at a chemical plant. It's Batman's fault. He falls in, so he blames him for his transition. We'll get into the character stuff of that a little bit later. But let's actually talk about this substance, Smilex, how it works. What's the chemistry behind it? Tell me about the science of Smilex.
So Smilex, let's talk about the effect of Smilex. So the first thing is that once it's administered, the person laughs hysterically, and it's fatal. And they end up with this death grin on their. That's the one on their faces. Yes. And that's how I know you're a cyborg. So, like, peel off your face. So, one aspect of this, there are those symptoms. Are there actually chemicals that can create those particular symptoms? Mm-hmm. The second thing about Smilex that jumps out to me is the speed at which it acts. Okay. So, it's fast. Okay.
Yeah.
And why is that relevant? Because if you're going to make somebody burst into hysterical laughter, that means you're getting to the brain, central nervous system somehow, right? And generally that takes some time. And there's that blood-brain barrier thing that, also only allows certain chemicals to penetrate the brain in that way. So let me get down to some of the answers. The first is, can such a chemical exist? Can it be administered in the ways that the Joker seemed to administer it? I say we have to look no further than the airport and the death of Kim Jong-un's stepbrother, I think it was, where these two ladies had what appears to be some sort of chemical agent, I think it's VX is the one, on a rag or on their hands. They wipe his face and he's dead in 20 minutes. No laughter, of course.
No.
Yeah, no.
Not a laughing matter at all.
So rapid death, yes, from a chemical agent. But this particular path that you go down from the Joker Smilex is weird, right? But then again, there are a combination of different substances that individually have each of these effects separately. And they exist both in nature as well as is in, chemical agents created for war. So let me pull out a Tamara, and I'm going to read a quote. Because if you want to know about nasty venoms, who do you ask? An Australian.
I was going to say a snake person.
Yes, an Australian. They know everything about nasty chemicals. So here is a woman named Jamie Seymour, an associate professor at the Australian Institute for Tropical Health and Medicine. Hi, Jamie. If people said that I mentioned you on the show, it's true. There is no venomous animal on the planet that could do everything the Joker venom does. Having said that, there are components of different animal venoms in the animal kingdom that could, in combination. My understanding of the Joker is that he's quite smart chemist, so it would be possible to extract the components from these venoms and put them together. If you were looking for a component of a victim that caused cardiac standstill very quickly, you could get that from box jellyfish venom. So box jellyfish are in the waters off Australia. And when you go to Australia, you go to the beach, you'll see that there are these areas that are netted off that are safe to swim in. The main reason is this damn box jellyfish.
That's also the jellyfish that I don't know if you saw
That killed you?
Yes, and then I came
The
back.
first time? Okay.
That's also the jellyfish they talk about in the Annette Bening movie where she played the swimmer who did the So that's the very dangerous that she gets stung by, and they create the custom mask for her.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So the box jellyfish, if you look at the animals with the most dangerous venoms on average, right, it seems to be creatures that are fragile, and so they got to kill quickly and instantly so that they don't themselves get damaged, right? So it's a tiny jellyfish with these super long, deadly chemicals. So anyway, all right, a large quantity of box jellyfish venom would cause standstill within seconds if you diluted it, cardiac standstill seconds if you diluted it within minutes. All right, if you were looking for a contraction of facial muscles, like get the smile, the cone snail's venom does exactly that. So the cone snail, there is a subreddit that is people that doing things that might kill them, but they don't. One of the most common are people holding these cone snails in their hands, right?
Okay.
And shutting the brain down is a little bit more difficult because the blood-brain barrier. To make that happen, you'd have to inject right into the central nervous system, but there is a wasp that does that. So if you were to mix the toxin from a box jellyfish, the toxin from a cone snail, and the toxin from a blue-ringed octopus, which is the other animal people are often holding on that, then you would cause cardiac standstill almost immediately. You would cause all the muscles in the face and body to contract, and you would cause all neural cessation to stop throughout the body.
Does it strike you as interesting that these are all creatures of the sea?
Interesting point. I did not notice that when I put that together. But, when I think of venomous animals, the sea, the chemistry in the sea, one of the things I read about once upon a time that I haven't verified necessarily, so please verify the veracity of this. But, we have issues with bacteria and viruses here in the atmosphere and on land. And allegedly, what we deal with is nothing compared to what they have to contend with in aquatic environments in terms of how many types there are, how dangerous they are. It seems like that's the place. So, but we have bats who have amazing immune systems and can survive things that other animals can't. So what does this all say? This all says that all of the ingredients exist. And if you see what was left out of that list, it was making a person laugh like they do. And that's the thing that typically would take time to create that sort of sensation in the brain. Like, for example, if you go to a college dormitory, how long after the kids hit the bong are they laughing uncontrollably? How long does that take?
It takes a little bit.
Takes a little bit of time, right? It's the thing, right?
Yeah.
This one acts instantly. So the answer is that, so you can put all of these exist individually. There is no single substance that exists that can do it all. But it seems like the experts in toxicology and such are claiming that you can theoretically synthesize something to give you all of the effects aside from, as quickly as they occur, aside from the laughing part, right? So if you can find someone that's already blasted and giggly and then give them the toxin, you get all the effects. Right? So it's a stoner murder. It's how you murder stoners, right? Joker specializes on murdering stoners. That happens, right? Sometimes serial killers have a particular profile that they go for, right? A demographic profile.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah. So maybe so what does that mean? So does that mean it flies or it doesn't fly? Because what it sounds like is it's theoretically possible. It does not exist today, and many of the 3 out of 4 are relatively straightforward. Quickly, the fourth one is relatively straightforward, just not quickly. So, could you in the future engineer a chemical that mimics the Joker poison or the venom, the Joker venom? It seems to me reading the experts that potential, it's not off the table, right? It's
Yeah.
not off the table. And so, in physics, we have this thing called the principle of totalitarianism that says any physical process that's not strictly forbidden from occurring must occur, right? So this sounds like one that is not strictly forbidden in any case. And, is already known in many cases. Is just a matter of coming up with that bespoke recipe that does the job chemically at once.
I almost feel like, well, my brain went to two different places. My brain went to, at some point, there's going to be a very, very bad gummy that you want to make sure you do not take. The other place my brain went to was
the Joker gummy.
The Joker gummy, yeah.
I think you just invented a new product.
I think I did. And then the other place my brain went to was how that Joker gummy gets invented, which is, we talk so much about AI these days, right? And like what it can and should not be used for. But in all of the cases, especially when it comes to some of the ways it's being employed in the scientific realm, is that it is speeding up discovery because it works so quickly. And so, I mean, not that I want to like put this out into the world, but this seems like one of those things where if you could train an AI on this, if this was really what you wanted to do, this would be a bad use of AI to come up with a very bad product.
Right. So if you combine AI and quantum computing, essentially what you're saying is you can run simultaneous parallel experiments of different molecules and their effects and synthesize, because in the world of science, it's quite often where you conceive of a concept of a technology, but you don't yet have the know-how to create it, right?
Yeah.
Or the engineering to create it. And this seems like it falls into that category for me. It seems like that's the thing. And I don't know, why you would want to, but this guy, the Joker, Jack, is known as a very competent chemist. And he is also a madman. And he did have the trauma of falling into that vat of chemicals and being disfigured. So under all of those circumstances, I guess he could see someone being vindictive, being a jerk, not just brushing that dirt off his shoulders, and becoming a diabolical maniac here, right? So I'm going to reluctantly say Joker venom flies.
No, that tracks. I mean, everything that you laid out, because to remind people too, like what we talk about on this show when we're talking about the science of it all is not just does it exist now, but based on scientific principles that we currently, could it exist?
Yes, right.
At some point, if we had all the proper ingredients or know-how or tools to eventually get to an answer. So that totally makes sense to me.
And financial support, yeah.
Yeah, that too. And you actually kind of like leaped right into the story piece.
I did?
You kind of leaped into the story piece of it, which I will pick up and run with, which is this idea of the Joker's character and does that support him making and deploying this kind of thing. And here's where we need to absolutely stop, because we cannot continue this conversation without talking about Jack Nicholson, who plays the Joker. Right? Like, he's such a huge part of this movie. He just gave this monumental performance across from Michael Keaton as Batman. And I will say, too, that when it was announced that Michael Keaton was going to be playing Batman, people were not thrilled about it. Like, context, this is 1989. He was really known as a comedic actor and kind of a very light, like we were talking earlier about how the world of Batman often feels dark. That's reflected in the visual palette. There's a reason he's called The Dark Knight. And, when you think about the kind of comedy Michael Keaton was doing at that point, it was very light comedy. Like, he wasn't a cutting edge, acerbic, sarcastic. Like, no, he was Johnny Dangerously.
Right.
Wait
a minute. So you're saying Bill Burr could play Batman?
Anything's possible.
Can you imagine?
But that said, Jack Nicholson, he was the first choice from the very, very, very beginning. And
So
he was in,
here's a question. So if a person, one of the things that has happened in my life in the last decade is, you go so far in your career as a scientist, you start getting recruited for leadership positions, president, CEO, vice president, right? Dean, this kind of thing.
yeah.
And I did a lot of those interviews over the last decade, came in second place every time, right? And there's a couple of factors I think that work against me. One, never actually been specifically that particular thing, but the other one is vibe, right? And I'm going somewhere with this. I think that when people are looking for leaders, there is a unwritten requirement that you are square, right? They're like, I'm going to look at your vibe and I'm going to determine your competence at this particular thing. And so when I look at Jack Nicholson's vibe, he comes across insane. All right. And so the question is that when I look at some great actors, I get that same feeling. So what's going on there, right? If it's valid to see square equals good, responsible leader, is it valid to say, I see a certain eccentricness in your brain and facial expressions? I think this speaks to your competency as an insane person.
Okay. I'm not going to clinically diagnose Jack Nicholson.
Did you watch As Good as It Gets?
Met the man.
As Good as It Gets? As Good as It Gets, the movie?
I have seen As Good as It Gets. Here's what I will say. Okay, so when it comes to acting, there are a lot of different ways to go, right? So you've got one of the things when you study theater, when you study acting, whether it's in class, college, et cetera, is you talk a lot about essence and the importance of kind of knowing yourself, right? Like what are those sort of quintessential qualities that make you you, that when people think of and it's vibe. I mean, it's another word for vibe, right? Like, what is that quintessential Hakeem vibe? What is that, you're saying for you, it is not square. I would agree. But which I love, which just makes talking to you so much fun. But, so what is your essence? And it's important to know what that is. Now, some actors get cast in things because of their essence, because it seems like they just are such a match for whatever the character is. Other actors get cast because they're chameleons. And while there might be a piece of their essence that flows into each thing, they look different, they feel different, they're very different in every single movie. Both of those things are valid. People are, I'm going to use the word movie star. People are movie stars for different reasons. There's that movie star who shows up time and time again on screen, and they're always that thing and is so much fun to watch, and it's great. Then there are the people who show up and they're different every single time, and that's amazing fun to watch as well.
You know what that reminds me of? Jamie Foxx and Terrence Howard.
Okay. How's that?
Jamie Foxx is more of the chameleon guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he had a little beef with Terrence Howard at one time, and he clowned him. And he was like, how come in every movie he's the same guy? But it's his vibe, right? He's being hired for his vibe for that role. For its vibe,
yeah. And I just giving a shout out to all of my fellow actors. I have to say this is a hard business, and there are so many reasons that people get hired, and sometimes you get hired because they've seen you do something, it's gone well, and studios want to repeat that success. You get hired to keep doing the same thing. Sometimes, you're able to create a career for yourself where very early on you can show that you can be different things in different stories. And a lot of that is business, it's opportunity, it's access, it's all those things. So careers are really complicated, and look, you also you got to pay the bills, right? So sometimes you have to make choices to do something. Maybe you want to try something different, but you got to pay the rent or send a kid to college or take care of your parents or whatever it might be.
Live indoors and eat.
Yeah, it is a complicated career.
It is. And it's not a, you can rely on the paycheck coming every 2 weeks for the next.
No, it does not work that way at
Yeah,
all.
more feast and famine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to Jack Nicholson. I mean,
Yeah.
when we're talking about this particular role and the vibe that he gives off, I mean, we're talking about, the guy who starred in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So I think when they were thinking about who would be a great match for this, Jack Nicholson, of course. And that did something really interesting, which was, keep in mind there hadn't been like a ton of big comic book movies before this. There were sort of B movie comic book movies. There had been other Batman movies, but this was really the first big Batman movie in like quite a while, actually. And so, like you had the original series, you had the comic books, you had the first Batman movie in 1943, and then there was a Batman and Robin movie.
Wait a minute.
There was a
1943?
there was a 1966 movie that was based on the TV series starring Adam West. But then 66 to 89, here you go. So by bringing, and Tim Burton, who we all, now revere as this, artist who has a very definite, love him or not, he is a very definite visual aesthetic. We know who he is. He was newer. He had done Beetlejuice. He was a newer director. He turned 30 during filming, and they were entrusting him with this very big property with what was a very big budget at the time and this very big movie star. And there's actually a great story about how he went with the producer, had Tim Burton went with the producer up to a ranch to go horseback riding with Jack Nicholson to basically Jack Nicholson didn't have approval, but this needed to work for final approval for everything. And Tim Burton did not know how to ride horses, but apparently it all went okay.
Yeah. Well, horses have this quality that can be good or bad, and that is that they have their own brain, right? They don't always need yours. That is
true, I suppose. I don't know. I can't ride horses because I'm deathly allergic to them. But which makes
the other thing is that if they have their own brain and they disagree with you, that's the big problem. I've had that occur to me on a horse in Mississippi back in the day, and let me tell you, it was frightening. I was like, "Oh, you're way bigger than me." Up to this moment, I thought I was the boss.
Right. So let's get back to this idea of this Smilex, this Joker venom, and how that works in the story. So what you had touched on before a little bit was this idea that you've got this character who, from the very beginning, they make sure that we know that he is a chemist, he is an artist, he is creative, and he is somebody who does have expertise in these things. What we also learn throughout, eventually Batman gets a file on his background. Jack Napier is his real name before he becomes the Joker. And we get a file on him where it talks about all the stuff that he's done. So he has got a long criminal history. We know that from the very beginning, he's, been a little like, and then they feed a couple of other things in there, right? So they feed in the idea that when the movie starts, he is part of Grissom's gang. Grissom's like the big gang boss. And he's part of his gang. He seems to be working his way up. He definitely seems to have maybe a little bit of an inferiority complex. He also clearly considers himself a ladies' man. He's having an affair with Grissom's girlfriend.
Oh.
Which ultimately is why Grissom, or one of the reasons we infer that Grissom actually sets him up to be taken down. And it is that happens at the chemical plant where Batman is the one who ultimately tips him into the vat of chemicals that turns him into the Joker with all of the effects that you were talking about before. And then he concocts this Smilex weapon and he deploys it in a bunch of ways. But what makes sense character-wise when we think about how is this weapon used in letting us know who the Joker is and furthering the story that is pretty consistent is that, the Joker talks about being an artist, and there's a lot of art throughout it. There's a whole scene in an art museum, the Flugelheim, which is kind of a take on the Guggenheim in New York City.
I didn't pick that
And
up.
he talks about the art of his smile and defacing things
Mm.
and what is beauty and making things beautiful and making things in his image. Between what you see with the women and everything else, he clearly has an ego.
Yeah.
And with this gas that, deforms people and makes them look just like him, he is exploring this idea. And so you buy into the fact of this particular brand of craziness that he has, and using this agent make this chemical agent make sense. So character-wise, I think it really works. The disfigurement he has, it's sort of
Right.
a mirror or external representation of who this guy is inside. And by letting by giving you glimpses into his childhood, all of the things that he's done, sort of all of these elements of who he is, you get to see that. I have a couple of places where I get bumped about the actual deployment of Smilex. That goes back kind of what you were talking about before, like the different forms where, there's one point where he puts it out in products that have to be mixed, combined in certain ways. There's another point where there's a festival and he fills the big carnival balloons with the Smilex, and that's deployed. I have questions about that. So I'll be honest, some of the plot pieces of it, I have some questions about some inconsistencies there, but it wasn't enough to take me out of it where I was like, well, this clearly can't work. This is bullshit. And maybe that's also because it is a comic book movie, right? And we all go into comic book movies with a little bit of suspension of disbelief because we know it's not a realistic world. It's a what if world.
Yeah.
So
it's like but some of it is trope, right? A lot of it is, this is just the way it's done. So I read a story about some actor who was going to get shot in a movie. So he went and looked at videos of, or somehow whatever data he had, because it was a long time ago, of people actually getting shot and what it was like. And so he gets on set and he mimics that. And they're like, no, that's all wrong, because people expected to see what they normally saw in movies and television shows. And so those actors didn't actually look at what actually happened. They kind of like one of the scenes to me that always stuck in my mind is in Scarface, where he's like, so I used to joke, I was like, oh yeah, I found the secret to everlasting life. All you gotta do is let a whole bunch of guys shoot you with machine guns, and as long as they don't stop, you'll stand there forever.
See, this is why movies and TV shows and now TikTok videos all have the little disclaimer of, this is not real life.
Right, yeah. And that's, even the Penguin, right? They always come with these grand plans. And the other trope is, I'm going to give you a speech. I'm not just going to kill you directly. I'm going to create this incredibly complicated way of killing you where all these moving parts have to go just right. And then right at my moment of triumph, instead of grasping the win, I'm going to pause for a speech.
Hey man, you got something to say.
Yeah, do that after you kill him, all right?
Right.
Yeah. So the question becomes, it feels like in the Batman story, they really tend to be true to the Batman franchise. And this is how it went. It's like, we're not going to clean this up and make it more realistic. I feel like that Joker movie, took things in a slightly different direction in order to give it a different type of realism and motivation.
I mean, I guess what I'll say about that is, obviously the Batman franchise is huge. You've got later incarnations, you've got the whole Christopher Nolan group, you've got the DC interconnected universe that comes about
and
later.
The greatest of all, you already named earlier, the TV show with what's his name?
Adam West.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
Adam West. I love that as a kid.
So I think what's interesting is that every director, there's so much source material. Every director can interpret things the way they want. And if you look at all the different incarnations of the Jokers, you've got your Heath Ledger, your Joaquin Phoenix, they're all slightly different. So for me, it's hard to say that what is true to the franchise because there are so many different versions of it. What I will say is that for this particular movie, the 1989 Tim Burton Batman, Jack Nicholson, the way they use Smilex in it to kind of build this story and help us understand who this character is, it makes sense to me. And then that is enough for me to jump on the what if train and bypass any stops I have along the way and enjoy the film. So for me,
Yes.
Smilex flies.
Smilex fly.
But it does bring up something interesting, right? Which is, okay, so this movie is from 1989. As we mentioned, it's, it was one of the first bigger comic book adaptations, major motion picture that then really opened the door to many, many more of them down the road. I mean, keep in mind, like, if you think about, a lot of people talk about the MCU. Iron Man was 2008, so you're still quite a ways out.
Yeah.
And here we are 35 years later, 1989, 35 years later.
Yeah.
I guess when I think about like our third piece, like, does it fly for the vibes? What I think about is now, here in 2024, does it feel outdated, or are there things that are planted and explored in this movie that still resonate today?
Oh, I see certain resonances immediately now that you say that.
Yeah.
So one of them, getting back to Smilex and it being, behaving like a lot of the nerve agents that were used in 20th century wartime, that was wartime. The Joker is not in a war. So he's basically doing civilian chemical warfare, right? And in the turn of the century, people are being mailed anthrax. There was there were those attacks in Japan. I think on the train it was VX gas, right? So in a way, it was prescient in seeing that, a chemist who is motivated in the wrong ways could become a true menace to society. And I tell you, when they were mailing anthrax, I actually had faculty colleagues that received, prominent faculty colleagues that received envelopes of powder. They had to shut down a lab or a university building or something. And, most of the time it turned out to be nothing. They were just somebody messing with them. But if they were sufficiently prominent, they were receiving a letter during that time, Yeah.
The other thing that makes me think about too is the way that he introduces this. So there's a broadcast where, you've got the law enforcement of Gotham City who are, trying to keep things under control, who are planning a festival. They keep having these press conferences on the steps. And during one of these broadcasts, you have the Joker come in with this commercial where he basically lets folks know about what this thing can do and that he has put this chemical into various beauty products and that one of them alone is not going to disfigure you, but it's when you put them all in combination, which is terrifying.
It is.
But what it does speak to is this idea of media manipulation, of taking control of the airwaves, of using that to spread fear. And when you think about like what is happening right now and what has happened in recent previous elections with misinformation and disinformation, especially as we head into like the world of deep fakes and things like that. I mean, again, prescient. Like something that you watch now, and it happened very differently in 1989 because, there was no TikTok. But the idea behind it, the seed of that idea.
The hijacking
the
broadcast is something that has happened in recent years. I think even in these Ukraine-Russia war, there's been some of that. Some broadcast hijacking has occurred. So that's, that has shown up in many other movies, right? Where suddenly people of Earth, suddenly every screen on the planet is people sitting in their living rooms are now looking at this. Even in Doctor Who, I think it happened once. And they use that also as a means of disseminating some sort of mind control or something of that nature. So in that way as well. And if you look at a lot of these technologies that Batman deploys, I haven't thought about that deeply, but I imagine that some of those are making their way. Like the one Batman movie that really impressed me in terms of the trailer is the one where he had that reversal one, is like a motorcycle and he hits the wall or something like that and goes, that was a visual, that really I was like, oh, are they using that in warfare now? Yeah. So how does it date forward in terms of, what the fiction saw versus what has become reality? Thank goodness we don't have any of the Batman villains in real life yet. We still are going with the politicians and corporate leaders and individual bad actors, I guess.
Yeah, but I would say that, in thinking about it, it doesn't, well, clearly it's from another time and it's set in another world. It doesn't feel like it's out of date. Like there's enough in there that still feels,
as far as that goes, it's aged well.
Yeah, that still resonates because you sort of feel those pieces. You feel those pieces of chemical warfare. You feel media I can say media manipulation. We were talking about acting before, all the tongue twisters you say to warm up. Media manipulation.
Media manipulates my mutton. Media manipulates my mutton, mama.
Media manipulates my mutton, mama. Media manipulates my mutton, mama.
We need an adjective in there.
Let's see. Mammoth media manipulation. So I would say that for when it comes to sort of the vibe of does it hold up? Does it still fly? I would say, yeah.
But it's still dark. You know what? When I see darkness in a movie, there ended up being the ultimate, oh my God, you're using darkness as a tool to hide your bad graphics. That happened in one of those early Spider-Man movies where it suddenly was a leap up, but then, he's always they replace real guy with CGI and it's always very dark. But the vibe and look, it's kind of like Star Wars, right? Star Wars has that certain look, feel thing to me that just feels kind of like it hasn't aged well. So they kind of revived it a little bit.
Right,
with a lot of newer stuff.
When they did the re-releases, yeah.
Yeah. And but it definitely has a feel and a vibe. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the Batman feel and vibe could go back to some of that Tim West. That was the good stuff.
Adam West?
Tim West? Matt West?
Adam West. Well, look, I got
Adam West. Yeah.
Adam West.
Exploding sharks.
You're combining Tim Burton and Adam West.
That's right. Yeah, Tim West.
But I gotta stand up here for my craftspeople though, because when you say darkness is used to hide bad craftsmanship, this movie won an Oscar for best art direction and for on-set decoration.
Well, I'm not saying this movie
Anton
did
Furst
that.
and Peter Young. All right, I
say that darkness reminds me of when people do that.
Just making sure. Gotta say
it just triggers me. You're trying to hide something.
So where do you fall? I'm a little confused. So it
typically when I go to a Batman movie, I shine a spotlight on the screen and end up getting kicked out. So it's hard. That was a joke. I shine a big flashlight on the screen in the movie theater. That's not.
Don't be doing that. Don't be doing that.
That ain't right. Yeah.
That ain't right.
I am so torn on this. I'm so torn because I love the Joker. Mm-hmm. Love the Joker, the character. Oh, I want to reluctantly say this Batman movie, this Smilex, fly for the vibe.
You're so reluctant. It's okay.
I'm taking it movie by movie. Not every Batman is equal. This one is one of the better ones, in my opinion.
All right. There you have it. The reluctant yet definitive answer.
Yes. It hovers. It jumps high like the Hulk. Okay. Right? Some people, if you're there and you're seeing the Hulk going through the sky, you'd be like, oh, look, the Hulk is flying. But no, he just jumped.
All right. We'll save analyzing the Hulk for another day. The aerodynamics of the Hulk for another day, for another episode.
All right, y'all. I know what you're thinking. You're like, Hakeem, tomorrow was great on this episode, but you really sucked because you're not giving Batman his proper due. Because there are some huge Batman fans out there. I know a lot of them. right? And my Batman fan friends always feel like I'm a bit of a hater, kind of like Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett. I love them both. They're amazing. But Tim Duncan, I go with Tim as the number one dude, right? Even though it's very close, right? So, when I tell that to my basketball buddies in that era, they're like, oh, you're hating on Kevin Garnett. No, I'm not. I'm not hating on Batman.
I was about to say, are you talking about sports? Because I have no idea who you're talking about.
Tim Duncan. You're gonna love Tim Duncan. The producers are gonna make us a Spotify Tim Duncan playlist for you. All right. Yeah, I'm talking about basketball. He doesn't have a. Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah.
He's not Shaquille O'Neal or Kobe or Jordan or any of those really exciting players.
Jordan, I know. Come on.
Yeah. Right. His nickname was the Big Fundamental, right? So a lot of people thought he was boring as a player, but I found him, although he is considered the best power forward in history still, I think. But anyway, where can people find us? Because I assume that if they're watching us, they already found us, but
if you want to pass word along to your friends, please tell them to check out Does It Fly Pod on TikTok and Instagram. We are at doesitflypod.com online. And if you're watching and have thoughts about Batman, about the Joker, about Smilex, or about all the basketball stuff that I'm clueless about, please leave us a comment. Thank you so much for watching. New episodes drop every Friday.
And if you check out our personal social media, Tamara Krinsky and Hakeem Oluseyi, we have shorts, we have clips, and we have a ball. So thank you for joining us.
We will see you next time.